Jake Sisko is growing Bajorn Keter pods to find out which hybrid yields the biggest root. Quark wants to sell collectibles like Andorian jewelry, Vulcan edict pins, and Bolian crystal steel. And Quark is allergic to nature. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We're also joined by two very special guests. It is a Nog episode, so very special welcome to Malissa Longo.
Hello.
And we're also joined by the director of this episode, which is Seasons 2, Episode 26, The Jem'Hadar. It's directed by Miss Kim Friedman. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Awesome.
Yeah, the season finale, actually. This is the last episode, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which I was very worried about because usually a season finale has a bigger bang story, a more violent story. And this, for the most part, was a kind of a very father-son. It started off very kind of naturalistic story. We were even in trees and nature, which is like very rare for a deep space episode.
Actually, we'll start at the beginning, but real quick, I did have a question about that. Was that an outdoor set with the trees and stuff?
No, it was a location, right? We were on location.
Okay.
We went outside, which was amazing. We were shocked by the sunlight because we always and suddenly we were in like real trees and leaves and dirt. Yeah.
Awesome. Because a lot of times it looks like it's outside, and then you just kind of like look a little bit more closely, and you're like, no, that's just a close up in a studio.
Well, there might have been some shots that we then did inside if there was a special effect or something, but maybe when the guys came, I don't know, when the Jem'Hadar came, I'm not sure. We might have done a few shots in studio, but we were out all day on location.
I have a question, Kim. I don't know if you're the one to answer this, but is the budget for this episode more than other episodes because it's a finale?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was because it was a finale, but there was two reasons why it was a little bit higher budget. One was we went outside, and location is always more expensive than feeding everybody and then staying at the studio. But also, there were some special effects and stuff, but I think it was spread over 2 episodes because actually the next episode that you're showing next week, The Search Part 1, which was kind of the continuation of this episode, had a lot of special effects. And so I think what they did was split budget over the 2, and it was a little higher.
And you directed that one too.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get started on this bit by bit. We get everything that we've ever wanted in this episode because it opens up with Jake, and then it's Jake and his dad, and then it's Jake and Nog all day long. So awesome. This is all we want. And Cirroc, do you remember?
I just want to say, I think there were 2 things were terrific in this. The father-son relationship, which was one of my favorites, not just that I directed, but favorite scenes in a lot of Deep Space Nines between father and son. And also, my dear Nog, oh my God, he was so wonderful. And the scenes with you two they were wonderful. They directed themselves. They were wonderful.
Yeah, I enjoyed the dynamic of him and Quark, the 2 of them, and versus the father-son combination. I liked that a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, just like Nog and you also. It was wonderful.
This was a big episode for me, actually. I didn't realize I was in this episode that much. So when I started to watch it, I said, oh, wow, this is pretty much, a Jake and Nog episode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And like Ryan says, we get so much in this episode. We get all the things that we've been kind of wanting.
Malissa, what did you think about 20 scenes with Jake and Nog together?
I loved it. I love this episode. I love it because it's a real relationships episode. There's different dynamics between the different relationships between Sisko and Quark and Nog and Jake and Nog and Sisko.
Right.
It's neat to see certain seeds being planted for future growth. So I love this episode for that reason. And Jake and Nog, I love that relationship.
Oh, that's wonderful. I did too. And I want to ask a question. This is because I'm coming new to this new to this, having not been around for years and years and years. Well, how did the fans like this episode? Was it too soft for them? Did they like a relationship episode, or did they want more action?
I can tell you this much, that the rating on IMDb is an 8.5, which is higher than the average rating. Usually it's around 7.5 or 7.9 or 8.
Right.
So it's definitely one of the higher ones. You know, myself as a fan, I remember liking it because, you know, it's got a good twist at the end. And because myself, I like episodes that give us couplings and triplets of people so that we can see what, you know, like a couple of weeks ago, we had a scene with Bashir and Kira, and we see for the first time Bashir's kind of trying to see if she's interested or whatever, and she smacks him down. But we get to see that dynamic. And then another time we have Bashir and Chief O'Brien together, and then we have Jake and Nog. And I love to see episodes that give us two people off, and or groups. You know, these two go there and these three go there. And we got that in spades. We got first the 4-person crew that we all loved, right? Such a great 4-person crew that we haven't seen yet together. But then later on, then they even split up, and it's 2 and 2. And then we also have the 2 runabouts going out with 2 and 3. So everybody's split up. Everybody's got their little relationships and storylines going. So, I mean, I love that stuff.
Right. I was curious.
What else I liked about the story is the performance of the guy who played the Jem'Hadar in this episode. I thought he made a really worthy adversary. Like, his presence was felt, and the threat, the eminence of threat was all over the place. And the other thing that I liked was the woman who played this the founder,
Eris.
Eris, right? I liked her in this as well because she had a very mysterious role to play, and she was very good at playing off of Quark and playing off of Sisko.
So here's some really cool nerdy stuff about her. She also played Alara Kitan's mother and Robert Picardo's wife in an episode of The Orville, when Alara's final episode, when she goes and visits her family. So it was Bob Picardo and her. I can't remember her name offhand. But yeah, so she's definitely a sci-fi veteran.
You know what I think is
Molly
funny
Hagan,
too?
that's her name, Molly Hagan. Sorry.
I think it's
right.
I think it's hello, I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah. Earthquake. Okay.
It does that every once in a while.
Right.
No, I thought it was funny that Nog had such a different role from what we're used to. Like, it's the complete opposite of what we end up seeing as the Captain Nog, who's confident and kind of knows his way around the ship. In this one, we see a guy who's like scared and like doesn't know, up from down. So
well, we did get a little taste of him though, because the first thing he says when he walks on the runabout was, "How do you fire the phasers?"
Right.
Hey, he's ready.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I also love that it shows his upbringing up to that point, with Quark being the head of the family and in charge and telling him what to do. But then you could see he kind of looks up to Sisko when he's talking. When Sisko talks to him, he's like,
Jesus.
"Yes, Commander." And then he gets embarrassed when Quark does his Quark stuff. He doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of Captain Sisko or Commander Sisko at the moment.
You're right. You're right. I mean, those seeds are definitely planted there, where he's a little curious about the ship. He's a little embarrassed about Quark. He starts to look up to Commander Sisko. He's got an adventure going on with Jake. I mean, there's definitely, you could see that those seeds were planted far back.
Yeah. Well, and his curiosity and his desire to learn is evident to me as well. So.
Right. I wanted to say something just so it's just not I don't want to embarrass anybody here, but I also felt that the acting for you two guys, oh my God, for Jake and Nog was above and beyond. I mean, I just thought you just off you home run, whatever you say, out of the park.
Touchdown.
The relationship was great, but also you were suddenly we weren't in Deep Space Nine, and we could see the humanity in these characters. In other words, we weren't on a spaceship. We could be anywhere. These were two kids, kind of, being kids, and also from a director's point of view, thank God, not overacting, not being like Disney child actors. And Cirroc is a wonderful actor.
Thank you.
And I'm encouraging him to act again. Because he's a really actor, and I don't want that to be the last of, that I see him on screen. Nog and Jake were just, it was incredible. And I also love both of their individual relationships with the captain, with Sisko. I thought it was wonderful. And kudos to actors playing young roles and not overacting and being wonderful.
Real quick, when you mentioned that, a little bit more on Cirroc, because he's not going to get away that easily with just like 2 compliments. But she was also complimenting him before we were recording, everybody at home. So just know he's got it coming. But also what I heard was that Cirroc was quite the troublemaker while you weren't shooting. Is that true?
No, I'm a little bit of a troublemaker too. So troublemakers are us. Maybe I didn't really notice.
No, I'm just kidding.
I have to tell you something. He was delightful to work with, and again, I was so heartened by the fact of working with young actors that were natural, just had it, could act the relationship, and weren't kind of overdoing it with child actors as they do. And again, I'm going to say it again and embarrass you, Cirroc, get back to acting. Okay?
I will.
As soon as this pandemic is settled down and we're on sets again and everything, I expect to see you acting again.
I will.
Because you're wonderful.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate
You're welcome.
it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun watching this episode, especially because we had so much interaction with Sisko. And I really enjoyed the moment where Sisko and Jake were bonding at the campsite.
Yeah.
And they just had that moment where he mentions my mom who passed away in the pilot episode. And it was kind of them talking about that again. I know that's part of the grieving process. And I enjoyed that moment. I think Sisko said something like, I think we need to take more vacations together. And Jake says, I'm ready anytime. And I'm sure Nog is too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just that little rip right there was like a good moment between us.
You also brought out something wonderful in Sisko, in the captain, in his acting, because not by lack of talent, he's a brilliant actor, but he was often given what I call Shakespeare in space. These long monologues that were like, he was doing Hamlet soliloquies only with science fiction terms that actually weren't real, but created by Ira and created by the writers. And here, because of the relationship with you two, he got a chance to really show his acting chops as just a wonderful, naturalistic, can do anything actor. So I thought that was great too, that relationship gave him the opportunity to not be the quote captain, with the big monologues, which is great.
This time it was actually Jake Sisko that had the crazy line. When the first line, he says, I'm growing Bajoran caterpods to find out which hybrid yields the biggest root. I'm like, how do you deliver that naturally? There's no way to do it. I was reading it and I couldn't do it.
Shakespeare in space. I am telling you, they were writing Shakespeare in space and you just had to commit that you knew what they were. Yeah.
Yeah, those kinds of things are very difficult, especially the technical stuff. Those kinds of
the technical jargon was just so hard for the actors. Here they're trying to act and have relationships and look into each other's eyes and commit to the scene and the characters, and they're saying words that some of them technically are totally made up, totally fantasy words. No one really knows what they mean, but yet they have to give them meaning. So.
You must have had your hands full in this episode, Kim, because one of the things that I wrote down in my notes here was how many different sets there were. So we had the runabouts, we had the shuttle, we had the cave. can you get into like how many different locations and places?
I don't remember how many. All I know is it was driving us all crazy. And when we prepped the episode, when we prepared for the episode, it was we used to have boards, a real board. They still have real boards, but they also do it on computer now as well. Making up the schedule was one of the hardest parts of prep, how to fit all these scenes in and the actor schedules. And we were going between set after set after set. And I remember prepping for the episode, having to run to many different sets on different stages. And I was kind of losing track of, wait, this scene is here, this scene is there. So yeah, there were, for Deep Space Nine, there were a lot of locations. But actually, it was also interesting for me to see the crew outside, because even though they're all very good and very experienced, they hadn't gotten out much. Suddenly they were in an outside location, and I was watching them thinking, this is interesting. But yes, there were a lot of sets and a lot of cockpits and a lot of screens and a lot of thanks for the special effects people. Because as a director, you're running in, you're trying to get the scene, you're trying to get it on time, you're trying to get it good, you're trying to concentrate on the acting. And meanwhile, what's outside? What are they looking at? Where are they looking? What are they looking at? Is the ship shaking? Is it not shaking? Is the stars outside? Is a spaceship coming through? So the special effects people and the visual effects people really stuck by me and the crew during both the shoot of Jem'Hadar and the next one next week, The Search. Because,
go
ahead, Cirroc.
No, go ahead, Cirroc.
Well, my question for you, Kim, was did Ira or any of the writers sit down with you beforehand and say, okay, this is who the Jem'Hadar are going to be, and this is how essential they are to the storyline going forward?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for other directors, but I thought a wonderful relationship with the writers. And I assume they do with all the directors. And so we talked a lot about where the story was going to be going, who these people were as real people. And as you said, the man who played the Jem'Hadar, the main guy, it's hard playing through a face full of prosthetics. It is really hard to act. And Armin did it. Odo, oh my God. Right. Mm-hmm. Look at his eyes. What you do is look at his eyes and you want to cry. Your heart breaks. Same with Nog, okay? Really hard to go through those prosthetics. So it was important for me to know, so I could direct who these Jem'Hadar were going to be, what they were made of, what they were like, so that they were real people, not just people in a funny mask, because the special effects can sometimes play you, and you want the actor to come through. You don't want it to be about the mask and the ears and the head, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, because this was the very first time we're seeing the Jem'Hadar, so there's kind of like that pressure to establish their style and their type, and same thing with the Vorta, Eris.
Yeah. We had, to your point, the writers were very particular in, besides just the scenes, talking about scenes and acting, talking about the backstories and the history to come of all the characters, new, old ones that reappear. It was an ongoing discussion and a lot during prep.
Two quick things. One was that when you mentioned cockpits earlier, you said there's so many different cockpits. It reminded me that there was something I wanted to point out very quickly, which was the tiny little shot of the bridge of the Odyssey, right? And really, it just kept cutting at that same shot or that same angle. And we would see the captain and the commander, and you had a couple background actors in blue and in gold. I'm like, boy, you really did a lot with very little in that one little angle, because you're probably pressed for time and pressed for locations. They're like, okay, we could give you this little nugget of a set real quick.
We couldn't make a huge new set for already the Deep Space Nine set is so gorgeous. So we're sometimes like two walls, like the two walls and just blank space, and you imagine they're going to put in stars or something outside. And you just have to use your imagination and try to.
It worked great. It worked
except in one shot, which we'll talk about later.
Oh, yeah. So stay tuned for that, because we're going to take a break in a few minutes.
She's great.
But also, Malissa and I, for those of you that are just listening and not watching, we both chose backgrounds of Jake and Nog looking scared or surprised or something like that, because there are so many good moments between the two of them. And I wanted to ask Malissa, what was your favorite of the scenes between the two of them? And did you notice anything this time that you hadn't noticed before?
When we come back or right now?
Right now.
Okay.
Are we just teasing everything? They just tease.
Yes.
No, we have a few minutes.
No, I love the scenes on the runabout between Jake and Nog and them trying to figure out how to take the autopilot out or so that they can get back to the station. And then when the Jem'Hadar ship comes off of the planet and Nog's like, fire phasers!
That's right.
What's the torpedoes?
Yeah. Evacuation
Evasive maneuvers. It's hilarious. And
see, he was already learning right there.
Yeah. And how much he grabbed onto Jake, and Jake was his rock, and so he was like, Jake's the safety net here because he's got the answers and his father's the
good thing I studied with Chief O'Brien,
right?
For one episode.
Right.
That one episode with O'Brien really paid off.
Yeah.
Can I ask everyone to look for the bad shot of mine?
Oh, that is a good.
Yes, the worst shot I have ever made, probably in the history of television, but certainly in my history, is in this episode.
See, because when I was watching, I saw maybe a dozen bad shots.
Oh,
so, I'm just kidding. I didn't know. I didn't know. I can't narrow it down. No.
I'm sorry, Tim. He can't help himself.
The one that tops them all. You'll see it.
There were too many compliments. It hurts.
I didn't. Honestly, the story was moving along so quickly that I didn't see any bad shots in my opinion.
If you watch for it this time, I think you're all going to be able to see where the bad shot is.
Well, I didn't notice it either.
And it's collective, by the way. It's bad on everyone's part. The director's part, the camera part, the actor's part, in a funny way. You'll see.
Give us a hint.
I would guess, though, it has to be, I would guess that it was during a scene when there's movement on the camera or somebody's getting hit with a photon or something.
Yes.
That's my guess, because usually that's where the most complications can happen.
And it can be really tough with the actor. There'll be four actors going like this and one way. Yeah.
And I was promised that don't worry about it. We'll take care of it in post. We'll put special effects on. Well, they didn't, so you'll all see it.
Oh, great. Well, now I really got to hear about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're about to hit that first break, but I will also say that there's another thing I really wanted to jump into as a nerd, which was the actor that played Captain Keogh is like TV and voiceover royalty.
Right.
For the Alan Oppenheimer. So for those of you that, unbelievable, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then we'll also hit those quick trivioids that we missed. I mean, there's so much. We're probably going to go for 7 hours today. Cirroc's like, you'll be doing it alone.
Yeah. You and Captain EO.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be right back on the 7th Rule.